cold email topic since it's one of the new channels of Galaxy. And we invited Jeremy Chatelain to start introducing this topic to us since he's an expert and founder of QuickMail. Do you want to introduce yourself and add something else?
I think you did it perfectly well. I don't think people are here to hear about me, but more about what I have to say. And hopefully I have plenty of good things to say for everyone. But otherwise, you said it well. I'm the founder of QuickMail.io. This is software to do cold outreach, specifically and uniquely by email. And and I think that could be a very interesting topic, given all the people that are interested in coming. So.
Yes, today we will discover how to get 98% of our emails delivered with some of his tricks and everything he knows, because he has a lot of experience in cold email. He has a book, a podcast, and a company.
Don't spoil it. This is one of my slides.
Sorry, let's get started. Do you want to jump in?
Oh, okay, sure. Let's do it. So first of all, what I like usually when I have attendees is I like to know where you guys are coming from. So I'm in Switzerland. I see someone is already from Switzerland. Hans Peter, that's cool. India, we got New Mexico, USA, France.
International.
Wonderful. Exactly what I like to see. That's awesome. Michigan, nice.
Good.
All right, so I'm gonna start sharing my screen.
Okay.
Here you go. So tell me if you can see it.
Now we can see it. It's good.
So good. Yeah, I'm sorry about there was a small mix-up with the Galaxy logo. I promise I didn't do it on purpose. My presentation was blue already. I've done that presentation a month ago. I just slightly revisited the slides, but I could really do it with my eyes closed. I won't try it because it's kind of boring to do an hour with the eyes closed, but believe me, I can do it and repeat it even in my sleep. I've been doing cold outreach for about 7 years. I started QuickMail.io around that time, which is, like I mentioned, a software to reach out by cold outreach by emails. And I really all started with by accident. I basically needed it for doing something else. And then I started the automation. And so over all those 7 years, and I accumulated a lot of knowledge, which hopefully I'm trying to condense because a lot of things changed. And doing cold outreach by emails this year is definitely not the same as 2 years ago or 3 years ago, or even last year, actually. So if you stick around, here's my promises to you. You'll know about how to avoid aggressive spam filters. You'll know how to reduce spam complaints, which is super important. You'll know how to keep a high engagement so you can keep on doing cold outreach. And once you do know all of that, then you probably want to know, how do I scale and how do I get more emails out of my inbox perfectly safely? And that's what we're covering in the last part. Before I start, is anyone having any kind of questions? I'll be trying to look at the chat from time to time. It's not really easy because I have to switch screens. But if you have any question, please do it. And I'm sure Sophia will sort of like combine them.
Yeah, I'll read them for you, or we can leave the Q&A at the end so we can read them all. But if you have any question, put them in the Q&A section instead of the chat, so we can actually see them and mark all of them.
Even better. Look at how prepared she is. I'm not. So if you enter a Q&A, I don't mind. We're going to have a live Q&A at the end where you can ask me pretty much everything. I don't have to answer, but you can ask me about everything you want. And if Sophia, if you find one of the questions very relevant at that moment, do not hesitate to interrupt me. I do like to have those sort of interaction with the with participants. And I think that's kind of the perk to be there. So please stay engaged. I'm going to ask you also a few things. Ron, having problems with the sound. Do you hear me, Sophia?
I hear you well. Is it my microphone or is Jeremy's microphone actually?
Or is it my voice? I'm speaking too quickly. Can everyone else hear me properly, or is it only one problem?
Perfect. Okay, nice. Just one thing. Any question related to Galaxy, we can leave it for the chat support, or yes, to the chat support. Okay, inside Galaxy, I will be happy to answer this for you. But let's leave questions to Jeremy. Okay.
Cool. All right. So what's next? Okay. So brief presentation of me. Like I mentioned, this is not about me. This is more about my knowledge and where does my knowledge comes from. So like I mentioned, I'm doing QuickMail for 7.5 years, almost 8 now. We're sending millions of emails. I think this month we are about 8 million emails being sent on behalf of our users. So we do know a thing or two about how to send emails. I wrote a book. It's a very old book, actually. At the end, I'm going to give you some resources, more newer resources. So I would say don't go and buy the book, but the book did sell pretty well. I've been doing co-authored a deliverability course on Udemy that you can take, and also a cold email course as well, which is way more in-depth for SDR teams. And I animate also a cold email outreach podcast with my good friend, Jack. Now, Jack is leading a lead generation agency, and I'm leading the sort of like technology side. So if you like those sort of like banter back and forth between two sort of like founder talking about cold outreach, you may want to check it out. If you do, then it's quickmail.io/podcast. And enough of promotional stuff. Let's move on to what is really important. It's like, first of all, why do I spend my time putting all the slides together for you guys about deliverability? So why does it matter? I think it's pretty obvious, but if your emails don't get delivered, then it's game over. There's no point in going outreach, right? If your recipient doesn't open or doesn't receive the email, it's like there's no point in tracking the open rate. There's no point in looking at reply. You're not going to go far. And unfortunately, this was a given a few years ago. Like I remember 2000. Holy hell, that's a long time ago. I think 2014, I could just send emails. No one realized that this was automation, and you had no problem with deliverability. But over the year, especially 2 years ago, there's been some crackdown from Google that actually put what we call TensorFlow. It's an algorithm to actually prevent emails to be sent in bulk, and you have to be way more intelligent and way smarter. And that's why I'm going to bring you that knowledge in
Jeremy.
In
do you mind speaking a little bit slower? I think
damn, this is
Ron
me.
who can't understand you, but it's fine.
You're absolutely right. I'm going to slow down a bit. This is difficult for me because when I'm excited, I have the tendency to speak fast. Okay, but thanks for reminding me. Please do that again, Sophia.
Okay.
All right. Deliverability, usually you can see that as, or I see that as three parts, three main buckets. The first one is how you set up your email address, whether it's like what email service provider you're taking. From the point where you're choosing, I'm going to use G Suite, or I'm going to use Microsoft Outlook, or I'm going to use something else. Sorry. That's when you're already losing some deliverability or not.
Okay.
My bad, I shouldn't drink sparkling water. Anyway, if you're looking at your data and what we know, you want to probably go and have your email address on Outlook from Microsoft because they have better deliverability overall. Now, this is not always true. Because if you have a new domain with with Microsoft, then they will put you on a certain IP that is of lower quality. So there's lots of subtleties, but at the end, this should not be your primary concern. You should pick up an ISP that is well-known, which is basically Microsoft or Google, and then run with it and try to play within their sort of rules. That will be my first advice to you. So don't overthink it, but if you have the choice, I will say go for Microsoft over Google, right?
Okay,
the flip side of that is that the support of Microsoft is horrendous. It's absolutely horrible. It's really difficult. So if you're not a tech expert or whiz expert, I will say buy a G Suite domain. This is simple. This is probably the easiest flow, and you will have less problem. If you already are very versed with technical stuff, then you may try to have your Outlook. Personally, I have my own personal domain on Google, but I do have also an outreach domain that I use Microsoft with.
Okay, you use both.
I use both, right, for different purposes. But again, like I mentioned, this is the difference probably is between 5 and 10%. So it's not huge, but it's not nothing either, right? So it's in between.
Okay.
Your domain will also make a difference. If you have, for example, walaxy.co, this will perform less well than actually if you have a walaxy.com. I don't know why, don't ask me why, but the .co domain is more spammy, has a higher spamminess than the .com. right?
Interesting. And what about .fr or .mx or?
Basically, you can think of the more expensive a domain, the less likely there is spam on it.
Okay.
Right? If you think of the .co, whenever you go into a startup weekend, they give you .co for free. So what do you think they do, right? They start spamming right away. The age of your domain is also going to play a certain role. So if you buy a .com, you're going to be put into certain list of like, oh, this is a new .com domain. So, but it's only for the first month or so, and it doesn't have such a big impact. The third one is way more important, which is the SPF and the DKIM. If you don't know what it is, simply Google it. It will be you having to change some of your DNS of your domain to include something. It's basically to prevent spoofing. And if you don't have that, you're going to have an absolutely terrible deliverability rate.
Okay, here's someone who's asking if .expert is good, or should it be .com? I haven't ever.
I never tried it personally. I tend to stick with this sort of like usual TLD, like the .com, .net, .org, .io as well works well. So all those ones are okay. And bear in mind, the two first points, the ESP and the domain, are minor point compared to the third one, which is the SPF and DKIM. Like you can go away with, using not the best ESP, not doing the best domain, but at least if you have the SPF and the DKIM set up, you're good. If the other way around doesn't work, full stop.
Okay, and can you give us a little bit of context of what SPF? I know you said Google it, but if you can,
I would say Google it. It's extremely technical, but it's really
okay.
simple in the end. It's just a matter of changing a field in your DNS. So when you buy a domain, make sure that you also add certain text to it that basically say what ESP provider is allowed to actually send emails on my behalf. Right?
Okay.
There are guides everywhere to actually help you to set up your SPF and DKIM. In fact, we do have tools as well to show you if your SPF and DKIM are properly set up. I'm going to say them at the end if you're interested.
Good.
Okay, the second part of your deliverability or things that affect your deliverability, now you took care of the infrastructure, is the email, the email content to some extent, right? So if you're using spam words, like, get it for free, click here, those sort of things, that doesn't actually go very well. In fact, I even tried it with my good friend, Jack. I actually sent him, we've been emailing each other for quite some time, but I sent him an email with like, buy my free Viagra. And then of course he ended up in his spam, even though we do communicate very often. So it was very funny exercise, but you do have some words that are more spammy than others. And so you have to sort of avoid them.
Is there any website where I can find the spammy words that I should avoid, or any guide?
Oh, this is a great question. So here's a big disclaimer here. We can only try to reverse engineer what Google and other email providers are putting in place. Everyone has their own sort of like thing. For some, you could get away with adding some sort of like spam words, and some other you won't. Basically, if you have the mindset to try to reach out to someone and open a conversation, you should be fine most of the time, right? If you have the mindset of, I'm going to send email to sell, you have the wrong mindset. And then you're going to put those words in. You can Google it again. I think HubSpot has a list of like 400 words or whatever. At the end of the day, it's simple. If you look at your text and it looks like, you have like free something, buy something, all those sort of like very easily spottable spammy words, you're doing it wrongly. So I would say stay away from that. Try to open a conversation. So for me, it'd be, hey, Sophia, would you be interested in something else? And that would be an okay, cold outreach email. It doesn't have to be like, hey, Sophia, we're the best one. Please choose one of our package, subscription, and then buy it with this link. It's like, doesn't work, right?
Yes.
Anyway, the second thing is what we call risky content. I'm not quite sure what I mentioned by risky content. I may have to come back to it. Then you have link and tracking. So the more links you put in your emails, the more chances that your email is going to be stopped. Because every time you put a link, the link reputation will actually be checked. And if this is a sort of like link that's been associated with a lot of spam, this link will actually, prevent your emails from being delivered. So be mindful of that, especially when you're putting the open tracking in place, because links will be put in. Same for the unsubscribe, same for like tracking links and stuff like that. You have to be a bit careful about that. I would recommend in the beginning, just send normal emails, expecting just a reply, not expecting them to click on things. You can get away.
Sorry, about the signature, can I add the link of my landing page, or that counts as
You can. My trick is that use some whitelisted links. So for example, that could be LinkedIn, your LinkedIn profile, or that could be a YouTube link, right? And the YouTube link is actually a pretty neat trick, because if you add it, Google and Gmail will automatically add the preview of that YouTube. So you should do some stuff like that are pretty neat. Other than that, you could also have your link. We call it custom domain tracking. We're going to come back to that, but you can actually add a link that is the same as your domain, and then in this case, it's less risky than sort of like, so like if I send an email from quickmail.io and I have a link in my message that is quickmail.io, then it's kind of okay. But if I link to somewhere else, and that's weird. That's more risky, right?
Okay, and this includes the subject and the email body, so both. Like
I didn't try a link in a subject, but that sounds suspicious to me. Like, when was the last time you contacted a friend?
Maybe the spammy words.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, no, a link would be super weird. Yeah.
You can link your, buy my Viagra now, as well. I don't think you're going to have a great deliverability rate.
Yes.
Right. The last thing is an interesting one, because it's not obvious. Basically, I recommend a lot of people to do A/B testing, and they tell me like, but Jeremy, I don't really need to test all my copy that much. The volume is too low and so on. But I tell them that this is for deliverability. If you send always the same text consistently, then your performance when it comes to deliverability will sort of like slowly dwindle down. So you have to be careful with that. So add a lot of variation. The variation could be minimal, or it could be drastic. If you want to do a good A/B testing, do really different variation, like completely drastic, like, hey, Sophia, would you be interested in, meeting in Paris? And then, hey, Sophia, would you be interested in, discussing about a webinar? That's what real A/B testing is about, like really two different things. But if you add more variation, you're going to have better chance of deliverability.
Okay.
Makes sense? Am I speaking too fast, or is this?
It's good. It's perfect.
Okay, good.
Yes.
All right. The other thing, I sort of like bundle them all into one categories, and because everyone is sort of like their own categories, but you have what audience you're contacting. This is super important. If you trying to contact B2C with cold outreach, you're going to have a hard time. People don't like to be contacted on their personal emails. And then usually the return per customers is much smaller on B2C. So you're going to have to contact a lot more people. And then that comes lots of problems with deliverability and things like that. Then you got the GDPR and all those sort of things are actually like regulations, sorry. Then all those things are actually a burden. So I would recommend you always contact B2C, which is you're contacting other businesses. And you could tell me like, but Jeremy, I'm selling, I don't know, a bottle of water or whatever. It's like, it's fine. But then in this case, contact the distributor, right? Or contact, a reseller or some other people that have a business that could effectively reach out to your audience, or influencers, or, YouTubers, whatever kind of thing, not the actual end customers.
Okay.
Cool. Inbox categories, depends on the tool you're using. So you have to be slightly careful with what tool you're using for, sending your cold outreach, because you may actually end up more easily into promotional tab. So some people are still using MailChimp, which is like a newsletter type to actually send cold outreach. It's like, no go, don't do that. It's not gonna work. You're not going to have a lot of chances doing that. Next one is blacklists. If your domain is blacklisted, or if you include a link to a blacklisted domain, that's it, game over. You're not going to be able to.
How can you know your domain is blacklisted?
I'm going to give a list of tools at the end.
Okay.
The best one I like is MX Toolbox. We're also having that in QuickMail, but we don't check all the blacklists. We check the biggest ones. So depends what tool you want to use, but I show you a few free ones that you could use.
Okay, good.
Your bounce rate is something you have to be very careful about. You can't, if you have 100 prospects, make sure you verify their emails first with tools. I recommend Never Bounce. They're one of the best on the market to do that. We are actually using Never Bounce ourselves. And because otherwise signals to your ESP, the whatever email provider you're using, that basically most of the emails you're sending us, random shoot, like shooting at random, like let me type some random names and then send emails, and it's likely you're doing bulk communication instead of actually trying to communicate with people So it's not a good idea. And the last thing I would mention that really impacts your deliverability is volume. And you may not think about it per se, but as you're going to grow into higher volume, then you're gonna appear like above the radar, and then suddenly you have scrutiny on you, and then it's not good. But also if you change too quickly, like you don't do any outreach, like you have 0 in your inbox, and the next day you have 1,000, it's like no go. I would recommend you stay about like the 100 emails a day. And once it works, then you move to the 200. In terms of volume, there should be more than enough, but I'll show you also some strategies.
So you need to warm up your email first.
Yeah, that's coming.
Okay, and what's a worrying bounce rate in your experience? Like a worrying bounce rate, like
I would say everything above 9% or above is way too high. You should aim for 5% and below. Okay. If you have 9, stop it. Stop. Your prospecting is not working.
Okay.
All right. So assessing your deliverability. So that's nice talking about all the things that can impact your deliverability, but how do you know your current deliverability, right? There are 3 ways you can do it. You can use the replies you're getting and unsubscribe requests you're getting, because honestly, if I receive a reply, that does mean that they actually received the email, right? And read it before replying. So that's the safest metric, but of course, it doesn't actually show all the people who actually received the email but didn't reply, right? So that's why a lot of people use version B, which is open rate or click rate. They use it as a proxy. So they think like if 10% open or if 20% open, then that means at least this minimum number of people actually received it. Could be more, but it's a proxy. So they use that as a proxy. The third one is what we call the sample size. Now, the sample size is simple, is you send to 100 emails, for example, to inboxes that you own or someone else own, and can tell you without replying, without clicking, whatever, if the email's been received properly, right? Okay. We're gonna come back to that, but that's basically your 3 methods of assessing your deliverability that you have at the moment. There's no perfect, like click on one button, get my number. If that happens, they have to do one of those 3 steps.
Okay, good.
All right, enough me talking. I'd like to know if you can type in the chat, what's your current open rate, if you know it, like if you're sending like 100 emails, like roughly how many people are going to open your email. So we're talking about the sort of like proxy approach. 20%, yeah, for Anshika. 15%, okay, for Jason. Do we have more? 2%. Oh my God, Philippe, you need to change your way of doing it. 35%, 28, 25, 50.
50, wow.
It's great you all are here, because honestly, I'm going to, to help you reach 80 and more. 25, 30. All right, all those numbers that I'm receiving are closer to what we call newsletter type of, open rates. Okay. And this is I think last year, MailChimp aggregated results across all industries for open rates. It's 21.33. I think it's super low. And if you get that, stop straight away what you're doing, because the game is not the same. If you're using MailChimp and other type of email sender that are for newsletters, you're never going to get a great deliverability. So this is something I did, is I looked at all across quick mails. So we have thousands of clients, and I took all their campaigns and then put them on a graph and then see how much percentage they're getting. So you could see very clearly that we have quite a lot under 20%, right? And then we have most people receive around 60% open rates, And then it's harder to get more, right? So, people getting like 95 are more exceptions than others.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Can you see?
But I have a question. These are similar campaigns. They have like similar industries, or how?
No, this is across industries. This is across every industries. Also, most of our clients are contacting, technical companies to some extent, one way or another. Actually, that's not true, but also roofer and stuff like that. But this is across all campaigns. And then bear in mind that my ones, I'll show you my ones after, but it's like per campaigns, right? So you could be like one of your campaigns not doing great with some inbox, you're changing the inbox and then it gets better. So it will appear differently. But this is the zone you don't want to be in. You don't want to be under 20% because they basically go to spam straight away. So it's really not a good place to be.
Okay.
So after looking, I did a sort of like analysis, and that's what I can conclude. 20% of the campaigns have an open rate of less than 20%. So for me, they just don't work. But also 1/3 of campaigns have more than 60%. And I think that's a good place to be. You should always aim for 60% and more when it comes to open rates. If you got between 40 and 60, you need to do something. And if you got below 40, then I think forget it.
Okay.
8% of campaigns have more than 80% open rates, which is great. It's a really fantastic open rates to have. It's basically an indication that this is a super healthy inbox. And the average open rate is about 44%, which is not ideal.
Do you think this has something to do with your kind of offer, copywriting, or what's the issue or the thing that influences the more with the open rate?
There's a lot of things that impact the open rate, but I don't like looking at open rates on a personal basis because I think this is a wrong indicator to look at. So remember, I showed you that 3 different indicators. I think the open rate is the less interesting one to look at.
Okay.
One thing I do want to mention, because people may wonder, like, why do we got like so many like under 20 and so on, is because some of our campaigns do enable open. It's like a sure open, and we only increase it for when people reply or haven't subscribed. So that's also why you got some with like super low as well, which means their open rate is only a function of how many people actually do reply, right? So.
And this is for B2B and B2C, right? These numbers are...
I don't think B2C either works. So they won't stay long. If there is B2C, they probably will end up here anyway. So it's not a good place to be. This is my own stuff. So I'm not like the expert guy that tell you stuff and never done anything. So this is my campaigns of last month. You can see that I'm getting about like 82% out of 1,000 prospects that we contacted. So we got 601 people who actually opened. This is considered being okay. Like 82% is a good number. You could see that places here on a scale. It's not the best campaign, but it's definitely not a bad campaign either, right?
Okay, good. And the average size of those campaigns were 1,000 emails, or?
Oh, I say it has to be. I think I did when I did my my numbers, it had to be more than 200 prospect for the campaign.
Okay.
Right. Between either 200 or 500. Either way, this is like, it's a valid type of campaign at this stage.
Okay.
While we're at it, we can look at the reply rate. So the reply rate you should see, and it's very simple, is that you do have more campaign that doesn't work, because you've got only 1% reply rate. Here you got 3% reply rate. And the higher you go into the reply rate, the lower the chances of, the lower number of campaigns. I consider thing that works after 10%. So under 10%, your campaign doesn't work for me. Like, you still need to iterate on it. You still need to do some research. Between 10 and 20%, I consider it's working. And then you have the choice to either iterate on it, like you keep on doing A/B testing because you want more results. That's okay if you have a smaller market. And everything above 20 is like, golden. It's like, it's good. You don't need to change it. You probably will, your effort will be better spent on something else. That makes sense.
Okay.
Here's the data. 50% of campaigns have a reply rate of less than 10%, which means to me, one campaigns out of two campaigns are not working, right? That's too small for it could be a good numbers for newsletters and stuff like that, but definitely it's not a good number when you do cold outreach. But one fourth of the campaigns, so one quarter, has between 10 and 20. So for me, they're working. So you got 25% of campaigns that are working. That's it. And then you have 20% that have more than 20. And that's kind of like the holy grail. If you got more than 20%, you're good. And the funny thing, if you look at the graph as well, is like, you don't really see that. Well, it's like, all of that are actually making like 20%. And it's just because of the long tail, right? Okay. And that's how it's represented. So one campaign every 5 campaigns is doing fantastically well. That's what it means, 20%.
The difference is
lots of things.
Or okay.
Lots of things. I think this webinar is purely axed on deliverability. Yes. You do have lots of other resources I'm going to point to if you want to know more about how to do the cold email.
This was an A/B testing, or it was like a resume of all the campaigns you have worked with your users?
It's every user's on QuickMail. Okay, aggregated.
Okay, so yes,
which is not bad, because you have to think that one user actually spawns multiple campaigns.
Yes.
Right. So if you do 5 campaigns, according to the stats like this, then the 5th campaigns will work extremely well. It's not the case, right? It's more likely that a few people are doing something that is very sought after, and then they contact the right client, and so their campaign consistently makes a lot, of replies. But anyone actually do spawn multiple campaigns. We have like accounts with like 20, 30, 50 campaigns. So.
And by response rate, do you mean people who has a positive response to your email, or click OK, or
response? So that could be that any reply, right? That comes back your way. So it's not positive reply rate. Here's my own campaign. We had 17%. For me, that's good enough. Out of the 1,000 people we contacted, 124, less than 1,000. Sorry, 124 people actually replied. They are not all positive replies, but you have to aim when it comes to positive reply to 50%. Right? Okay. And as a slide note, you can see my bounce rate as well. It's about like 2.5. So it's not like I don't have any bounce at all, but you have to make sure that you keep an eye on that, because it's a sure way to indicate that you're bulking email and you're going to end up in spam very quickly.
Okay.
This is where I am on that line. So again, this is not fantastic, but it's not bad either, right? So it's a good campaign and that works well. All right, so here are the tools that you mentioned to help you with deliverability, assessing your deliverability. So I mentioned 4 tools. I could just mention QuickMail, but there are other ones that are also free. You got MX Toolbox, MX Tools. It's a great tool. You go there. Once you will buy your domain, you can go there and enter your domain, and it will tell you if you have some problems with your SPF. So that's a great tool to test. Glowcaps, you have to pay for it, but they probably have some trial or some stuff like that you can do as well. This is the sample technique I was talking about. So Glowcaps has a lot of inboxes. You send to a lot of inboxes. There's some stuff they do well, some stuff they don't do well, but overall, this gives you a good idea of how your deliverability is. Mail Tester is a very simple tool that will tell you if you're not delivering, what are some of the problems that you encounter in terms of setup for your technical stuff. And then you also have QuickMail, which I think I did a link after. And you can see what's important to you is to see that you're passing the SPF and you're passing the DKIM. If you don't, then that's some technical stuff you have to do on your DNS records.
Okay.
All right. Is everyone still with me?
Yes.
Okay.
Some people is asking about call to action and what can you do to improve your open rate, but I think this is a topic we will have in one of the next episodes with copywriting, because I think it's more about copywriting, right? So this will be another future episode that will be, I think it's November. Mm-hmm. So you can look at the upcoming webinars in in the Facebook community. Okay. Good.
Sounds good. So let's tackle spam complaints. I think that's a very important thing. All right. just type yes, exclamation mark if you ever flagged an email you received as spam, right? And and type no if you okay, all right. Oh, we do have no. Roman, you never actually flagged anyone as spam. I'm like super surprised. What happened? Oh, you blocked them. All right. It's a good one. Okay, great. We got lots of yeses. This is no surprise. I do it too, actually. But I do it. I mean, I have a folder which I called cold email swap file. And basically, whenever I receive a cold email, I actually move that to this folder. So I have like a folder that is a repository of all the cold outreach that I received. And sometimes it's fun. I do some teardowns about it. But the interesting thing is that I do flag you for two reasons. The first one is you're actually one reason for sure. The other one's not always, but there's one reason where I will flag you as spam straight away is if you're actually reaching to the wrong inbox. Like, for example, I do receive cold outreach on privacy@quickmail.io. I was like, no, I'm sorry. There's no one at privacy.quickmail.io that would want to buy, a tool for, or website or whatever. Or if you send an email to abuse@quickmail.io and you're actually trying to, sell us something. For me, it's like, it's a cardinal sin. And so I will flag you as spam. Other than that, you'll end up into my cold email swipe file. But we all did it. We all flag people as spam. Yes. Here are the big reasons why people do it most of the time. The content, like, this is the wrong person you're contacting. Like, let's say you're contacting me and you're trying to sell me something I don't care about, right? And it's very obvious. Then I will be annoyed that you're contacting me because I should not have been on your list, right? So I will, most people will flag you as spam. List is something else. So pay attention to your prospect list, like who you're contacting, super important. But also list is, don't send to group @ sales @ support @ all the sort of like group email address, because if you think about it, you're multiplying your chances of being flagged as spam. If I send an email to, support@quickmail.io, there are like maybe 5-10 people that will have the opportunity to flag you as spam, and they will. So you have to be careful about that. Always try to contact individuals at a company, never a group. You can do it still, but you should not, right? So your list is important. Your content is important. And then B2C, as I mentioned, is like, don't go for B2C. Don't go for private when you want to talk about work or about something professional, right? So avoid that. There's other ways to reach out to B2C than actually cold outreach.
Good.
Cool. So avoid those. Here's some ways to also reduce your spam complaints, right? The first one I will recommend is you do not contact domains, which means whatever tools you're using for sending emails, try to add certain domains in it. A simple one is @gmail.com. Add the @gmail.com, like the gmail.com domain, so you won't actually send to any free email, right? Unless you're obviously contacting, freelancers and stuff like that. But that's the idea. You should also add your clients, your competitions, some stuff like that, but do make good use of the DNC domain so people won't actually flag you as spam. Use personalization. So it's easier to say like, hey, Sophia, awesome webinar with Jeremy. I really like what I've seen. I learned a ton of it. Would you mind, blah, blah, blah. That goes a long way versus like, hey, Sophia, buy my product, click here. Right.
Totally, yes.
It goes without saying almost, right? The subject line is also quite important because the subject line should be a contract between what you're sending and what the person is expecting to read. Okay. A good example is the following. If you say like, I send you like, Sophia, let's say I send you like something like, your webinar didn't work. Then you open it and it's trying to sell you something about, web hosting. Like, you feel cheated, you think it's wrong, you feel, what I mean? So it's like, don't try to fool people with the subject line. Just go straight, use 1 word, 2 words. Like, if I contact you about the webinar and I'm trying to sell you something about webinar, I'll just put like webinar as a subject line. There's no need for having more.
Does emojis make an impact in the deliverability or not?
It doesn't too much, but you have to think that most of the tools are developed with American language. And and for having emojis, you have to move into Unicode. And Unicode is people are clever with Unicode. So for example, they will put Viagra, where the I of Viagra is a certain Unicode number that looks like an I, and then it's like, and then you can read Viagra. So the spam filter are suspicious of those Unicodes. And then obviously emojis are Unicodes as well. So you have to be slightly careful with that, but most of the time now it works fine. But again, you can try it, but I don't think it's a problem.
We love to put emojis in our titles, but I don't know if that, okay, so it's good.
It's fun, it's engaging with people, but be aware of your crowd. Like, who do you actually contact? Like, if I'm contacting lawyers, I'm not going to put emojis,
no,
right?
not, yes.
Know your audience, and then experiments. It may backfire sometimes, but it may not. Most of the time, that should be okay. Just be mindful of that and try without, right? If you have, suspicion.
Okay.
The frequency of email is another thing. Here's a good way to receive a lot of replies, and I'm not joking. Send emails with 1 hour delays between all your emails, and 10 emails with 1 hour delays. You're gonna get a lot of more replies. I guarantee you, the shorter the time between emails follow-ups, the more you're going to get replies. The problem is you're not going to get good replies. People are going to be upset. They're going to insult you. They are going to flag you as spam and so on. So the frequency, make sure it's not too aggressive, but 3 days usually is safer. If you go faster, you're going to get more replies. Just make sure that if you're starting to get negative replies, re-increase the frequency, right?
Okay.
So you can definitely experiment.
Like 2 business days is good?
2 to 3 business days is usually not a problem.
Okay, good.
Right.
Okay, just one thing, Wally. I think your question is related to copywriting, so we'll leave this to our next webinar, okay?
You can also ask me some copywriting
he
questions.
Says, what format is ideal for subject line?
But I said at the end, like during the live Q&A.
Let's leave this question at the end, and then we'll say yes.
Exactly, so we can keep on moving.
Good.
One thing that I will recommend everyone go through the exercise is like, every time you're sending 100 emails, you're getting 5 replies, which is 5% reply rates. I would encourage you to think, how can I actually double my reply rate by halving my size? So instead of sending 100 people and then receiving 5 replies, can you send to 50 people and still get 5 replies, right? And this exercise will force you to think, okay, well, who is actually replying? Who are those 5 that reply? In what industry they are, maybe what size of the company, try to find the attributes that makes them more likely to reply, and then half your list, right? So that's a good strategy.
Okay.
All right, let's go to positive engagement. The reason why we want to look at positive engagement is to keep your deliverability high. All right. I want to know if anyone is using a warm-up tool here. Like, does anyone, register to any of those tools out there? If you do, then type hot, and then I'll know. If I don't have any, that means no one is using a warm-up tool.
Okay.
Right, we don't have people using warm-up tools.
I think one of our users was using warm-up tool. I think G something. No.
Oh, you got plenty, honestly. We got one. Roy is using it. Great. Way to go, Roy.
Okay, good.
Oh, thanks, Jason.
Nice.
Oh yeah, well, not many people reply, which is a great topic. Either everyone fall asleep, or not many people are using a warm-up tool, but you should. And well, what is it? Okay, I should start with what is it? What is a warm-up tool? Warm-up tool is basically will take your inbox and send emails on your behalf to other inboxes, right? So it's like, why would I want to do that? The reason why you want to do that is because your email service provider will see that you're sending emails, and then those emails reply to you, right? So that's the idea. You keep on generating, I don't like to say it, but generating like fake noise that spool the spam filter and skew your email reputation, right?
Okay.
The reason why I don't like it is because for me, it seems like you're creating some noise on the internet, and that's absolutely not needed, but it is needed, and people have no way to go around it, because the categories there is either you're doing bulk email and then you should be banned and spammed straight away, or you're not doing bulk email, like networking discussion and stuff like that, and then that should be okay. I think the middle ground for cold outreach is super important. So we're not talking about spam. I think the spammer should be prevented and stopped. I'm talking about the people in between, which are genuinely interested in contacting other companies that they think will really benefit from their product. Nothing that usually leads to less engagement because less people reply than if you're sending emails to your friends, for example. And I think you're badly categorized by the email service provider as someone who spam. And so that's why email warm-up tools started to appear. They generate those sort of like fake back and forth replies. So the algorithms of Google or whoever is looking at your inbox will see like, oh, this is a healthy inbox. They got reply. They're contacting lots of people reply. So we should be fine and leave them alone. That's why you should turn it on. Now, the question is like, how do I turn something like that on? Like, how do I actually do that? My inbox send automatically emails and receive automatically replies. You have a few ways of doing it. You have a few tools. They pretty much all do different. They have different angle on how they do that, but most of the time they do all the same thing. When should you use an auto warm-up tool? I say always. It's not just to warm up your inbox, and once it's warmed up, you start the cold outreach. It's to mix those two sort of conversations, the cold outreach with the normal discussion that you have, right? With also the auto warmer. The more you mix the messages, the more your email inbox will be fine in terms of deliverability. How long should you use that? Well, as long as you do cold outreach. I have multiple inboxes. The one I never do cold outreach on, which is my own personal inbox, then I don't have it turned on. There's no need for that. But every inbox that do cold outreach, I have it turned on. So keep it open. The volume is the next question usually I get is like, okay, that's fine, Jeremy, but how many emails should I actually send? And I say it depends on how many emails you're sending with your cold outreach. If you're sending 100 emails with your cold outreach per day, having 3 to 5, maybe 10 cold warm-up emails is fine. You can do those volumes, but
you can set up this in your tool, right? This is something you set up depending on
pretty much all tools. They have it one way or another. They will tell you how many emails they will send on your behalf, right? So this is one of those variable. But you know, the funny thing is like when people ask me how much, I always have a hard time to answer because you can send 1 million emails and have zero problem whatsoever if people want to receive your email and reply to your emails. It's just as simple as that. So you could actually not need an auto warmer if all your emails, everyone's fine, everyone's happy, everyone's replied to you and they love it. It's like, it's fine. You will have no problem. On the flip side, if everyone hates what you have to offer, you're talking to the wrong people and so on, the auto warmer won't help you. It's like, it will be like 95% negative and then 5% positive. This won't work, right? So be mindful of that. The next thing is like the type of emails. Like, is that better if I do it manually into my interface versus actually having a software doing it? The answer is yes, but by how much? It doesn't seem to matter that much, right? So that means it's a good thing for us. It means we can use tools. The reason why I believe, Google and Microsoft doesn't actually crack down on that is because most of the tools are already using their APIs. And it's very difficult because some are very genuine tools using the API for conversation and communications. And some of them are like, just for warming up. So maybe those ones will be catch up at some point, but you shouldn't worry. Right now, this is working. So keep using that. Now, here's a question. Should you pay for it or not? Now, I'm of the opinion that it doesn't matter. Anyone will work. Because what it does is actually generate some engagement on your inbox. And so it doesn't matter if you're paying or not. I think what you're paying is the marketing side of it. Do I have something? Yeah, you should basically use your own one. It's free. Go for it. If you feel like you have to pay for it, then use another one. This is fine too. We make our one free for 2 reasons, actually. The first one is because we didn't want our personal users or all users to have to think, should I pay more in order to have better deliverability? For us, it's the wrong question. We don't want you to say, oh, I'm going to risk it, not enable the auto warmer and have bad deliverability. It's like, it's not a good thing. So we make it free for that. And the second reason is the more inboxes that participate sending and receiving emails, the healthier the program is. So if you're going for one tool, either it's a paid or a free, make sure that, there are enough inboxes in the pool so that, you're not always contacting the same inbox again and again every day.
Okay.
Here's how it looks like. This is my own inbox again. You could see that this is a fantastically healthy inbox. So this is my personal outreach inbox. I send about 100 emails a day. And you can see I do between 3-5 emails every day for the auto warmer. I did end up twice in spam, but it's really a no biggie. This is really a super healthy inboxes. There is no problem. You look at it, straight away, most of my emails are landing in inbox. I'm fine, right? On the, oops. Oh yeah, this is one, you could, this is something we mentioned a little bit earlier, is that I received an email of someone telling me, oh, I'm fine. I'm just going to send 800 warm-up emails per day so I can carry on, my cold outreach campaign. And I was like, seriously? Like, try to fix your campaign instead of having the auto warmer, supposedly fixing something that is broken. That's not going to work. The goal of the auto warmer is to really, keep you going longer with your deliverability, not to fix a bad outreach. And that is very important.
Okay, good. Yes. I have a question. If I have a bad score, does the warm-up tool will help me improve the reputation I have? Or
yes.
Okay.
Yes, but you will need to stop your cold outreach.
Okay.
Because it's not working. So the first thing you need to do is to stop your cold outreach, and it's going to probably take 2 to 4 weeks before it's going back to normal. And you will see it. Most of it will start getting green and green and green again. This one doesn't work exactly like I mentioned. The person has 20 emails warm up per day, which basically is only the one they send. So sometimes they also receive replies and sometimes reply to other ones. That's what generates the engagement. But the problem with that is this person didn't stop their cold outreach. And so they keep on getting, bad reputation, because there's not a magic tool, like I mentioned. You have to, it's not a substitute to a good campaign.
Okay.
Right. So let's say you have now, you have set up your inbox. It's working. You know what to send without, being penalized. You know how to keep your engagement high. Now you say, okay, I got something that is working. I want to scale up, right? And scaling is very difficult. I'm going to ask you a simple question. How many inboxes do you send email from? Do you have, for example, jeremy@quickmailapp.io plus jeremy@quickmail.io plus jeremy@quickmail.com? How many inbox do you actually use for doing your outreach? I'm suspecting the answer. I got one from Jason, one from Felipe, Roy, one per campaign. That's interesting, per campaign. Philip, one. Okay, so there is no other way that I know of to scale than actually scaling the number of inboxes, right? Okay. Because if you scale the volume, you're going to appear above the radar. People will notice you. Your email sending provider will notice you, and the game will be much harder to win. Instead, what I recommend is to maybe I'm diverging from the content here. What do I have on the slide? Can't have scaling until those ones are laid on. Yeah, okay. So it's not a substitute. You can't really start scaling if your list is incorrect. You don't scale if the people you're engaging with are people who don't need your solution. Don't scale if your content gets blocked. Don't scale if no one replies to you. You're only going to scale something bad, and something bad scaled is it's something worse. Okay. So don't do that until you at least have those 3 nailed down. Once you have that, the safest way, as I mentioned, to scale is to increase the number of inboxes. I call it load balancing. I actually coined the term inbox rotation, funnily enough. And I think inbox rotation starting to stick. I'll explain you what it is, but it's basically when you have a campaign, you can have multiple inboxes sending that campaign. Okay. So for example, I have jeremy@quickmail.io, quickmail.app, quickmailapp.io, and then quickmail.com. I will use those 3 inboxes along with maybe 100, prospects, and then roughly 33 prospects will use all of these. So it's a way of scaling your volume without necessarily scaling, without necessarily having to deal with all those extra complexity that comes from scaling volume. Does that make sense?
Yes, but there's Roy who used one per campaign. He's asking, is one domain email address needed per campaign?
Okay, that's a great question. Should I actually have multiple emails with different domains, or should I have multiple emails within the same domain? I have mixed feelings about this one. And I know it's not about feelings, it's about data. So the simplest way to get is to have different domains. But you can have multiple inboxes per domain. They're not all necessarily getting penalized. It depends on your email service provider. What I would say is that at least have 2 domains, because that way, if one domain starts, to be penalized, then you can still move to the second domain. And the best way to have it is always have the 2 domains working at the same time. That way, if one doesn't work, you only receive like a small impact. You don't have to sort of warm up a domain from scratch again and then work with it. So you can cool down one domain by removing those inboxes from the campaigns, for example, let it like 2-3 weeks on the auto warmer, and then bring it back in. Maybe you want to change and revisit your campaign as well. That could be a good thing. The other thing that helps you to scale is to have variable delays. Now, what is variable delays? Well, usually, unlike MailChimp and so on that do send millions of emails a second, they do try to do what we call blasting. So they basically send, if you have 100 prospects, here we go. They send 100 prospects in one go. That's bad practice. That's going to land you in spam. What you want is some delay between each email you're sending.
Simulate human behavior.
Yeah, pretty much. What we do in order to emulate human behavior is that we add variable time as well. So you have a minimum time between emails, and then you can add a certain variation on top. So that means like you're not sending every 30 seconds, every minute, whatever. And it's much harder for spam filters to realize, oh, that person is trying to spam.
Okay.
So try to find ways to have that in whatever software you're using. All right, so we're coming to the hour, actually. Here's what we covered so far: how to assess your deliverability, how to reduce spam complaints, how to increase engagement, and how to scale safely. Now, could you please help me out and type yes, ! if you learn at least 2 things? And if I don't have any answer, then probably a lot of people are sleeping, and I'm going to be very sad. Oh, many yeses. Thank you, Jason. Lucia, thank you so much. Felipe, Anthony, Charlie. All right, that's great. So that makes my day. Thank you for all the yeses. I do watch them. I appreciate that. So here's the live Q&A beginning. I want to give you 2 resources. The first one is PDF on deliverability that we built. It's just basically an aggregation of pretty much everything I said, plus more things if you're interested. You just go to quickmailer.io/101. And then, because it's a simple, basic stuff that you need to master, and then just enter your name and email, and then we'll send you the PDF. The other resource I want to point you to is our cold email. You remember that book I wrote, and I told you it's a bit outdated. I decided to build or to write the second version of that book, but instead of publishing it, I actually published a blog article, and it's like 16,000 words or something like that. And it's just basically a brain dump of all I know about cold emails. So all those questions you were asking, you're probably going to have the answer, or like most of the answers will be there for you. So go ahead, grab those. And if you have any questions, then I'm open to answer it.
Okay, so I will open the Q&A, but here's one of Walid who just left, but I think you will look at the replay. So he was asking about copywriting. What format is ideal for subject line? For example, a question type subject, like, are you looking to increase your sales, is to avoid?
If you can pin down prospects who are at that time, because time is very important in cold outreach. If that prospect at that time, he's having a problem to scale, is going to open and read it. So you can basically use your subject line as a pre-filtering if you're getting too many replies, right? So if I send something about a product, I receive too many replies and those are badly qualified prospects, I may want to try to qualify them with my email. So you're going to get less replies, but those replies will actually be of people who actually are more interested or like closer to the sales, further in the sales cycle. what I recommend, I used to actually use quick question mark. It works super well. It's probably one of the most popular, questions subject line there is. Nowadays, I'm actually doing 1-2 words, all lowercase. So that'll be like more sales question mark, for example. I'll do something like that. That will be my subject line if I was.
That's interesting, actually. Okay, can you remind us how to check our inbox reputation?
You can't unless you sign up for one of the auto warmer tools. You could do that with Quick Mail. You're gonna get like 2 weeks of free trial, and you can even move to the auto warmer plan and have it for free forever. Other than that, you can't really, because your reputation is with your email provider and they will never disclose that. So you have to use some tools to figure it out, right?
Okay.
You can figure it with tools, a technical setup, like did I put my SPF properly, my DKIM properly? But you can't really figure out your deliverability unless you actually send emails. Right?
Okay. Now, how cold emails for UK and Ireland as country? Cold email for UK and Ireland. Does it work? We get very bad results for UK and Ireland compared to any other country or region. For instance, open rate is 1 to 3% compared to 20 to 45% for other regions.
That's a very interesting one.
Interesting, actually, yes.
That's a good one. I actually never encountered this one. I'm surprised. I would never have expected this type of results. It doesn't quite make sense to me either. I will need to probably look deeper. It could be that you're using a different domain for this one. It could be that most people they're contacting are using their local ESP provider. Like I've seen someone mentioning OVH. I think they're terrible, so don't use OVH. But those sort of things. It could be that they are more prominent in that it's actually quite a little part of the world, Ireland, but it could be effectively there is some sort of like monopoly, oligopoly that makes it that this. I think it's suspicious. I'll be asking myself, other things. Maybe there are some infrastructure problems here, or setup problem, or you're on local blacklists. It could also be like we have like smaller blacklists, and it could be that the people you're contacting are mostly with a certain provider, and that certain provider is unfortunately using this smaller blacklist. So there's also a possibility. But hey, at the end of the day, the goal is not 100%, right? In this case, it may be worth like moving from 20 to 80%, like for sure, like 100%. But sometimes you're at 65, 70. Does it actually makes really a lot of sense to try to go to the 80%? Not necessarily always. So you have to balance the efforts versus the actual results. You don't need to get a reply from everyone you're sending. You just need to have an economic sense of your effort. So if you actually spending a certain effort on your cold outreach campaign and you're getting enough results, that's really what matters. Everything else is vanity metrics. Like who cares how many replies you receive if everyone is telling you get me off your list? Who cares, right?
Yes.
My campaigns made $30,000 in recurring revenue monthly. This last campaign. So for me, it's good. It's a good campaign. I'm happy with it. Was everyone happy to receive these emails? No. Does that matter? Not that much. I still have a very healthy inbox, and it's okay. You're gonna have to have rejection. Dealing with rejection is an important thing.
That's true. Okay, now what do you recommend about email bulk verification tools?
Email verification tools, I do highly recommend Never Bounce. In fact, we do integrate with Never Bounce directly in our applications. If you buy some of our credits, we'll use Never Bounce on the back end. And I use Never Bounce myself for my own campaigns. This is one of the best one at the moment that I know of. Right.
Okay. Now, in your experience, what type of email has the higher deliverability rates? Text-based e-messages or pretty HTML real images?
If you're trying to send an email to a friend or a coworker or someone how long would you actually spend on crafting a pretty image, a pretty email using HTML and stuff? Never. So that's one part of the answer. So don't do it. That's the first thing. Especially when you're doing cold outreach, you want to be a one-to-one person relationship. So don't do it. The second thing is a more technical answer, which means it doesn't matter too much to have an HTML versus a text only. Ideally, text only works better, full stop. But most of the emails that are sent are HTML that looks like text emails. And that's where you want to be. HTML message is not the problem. The problem is all the pretty stuff you're trying to do. If you're spending time on the form, like trying to change the font, trying to change the color, it's like never happening when you're sending to friends, coworkers. That's why the 1 to 2 words for the subject line works well. You don't write like a long subject line for, one of your friends, one of your, co-workers, or, people, that are in your network. So I would say, and it's clear, it's like, do send thing that doesn't play too much with the visual, unless this is a unique selling point. And I had one good example was like a t-shirt company, and they basically just crafted a logo of the founder directly while communicating to the founder. That makes sense, but anything else, don't, right? Or it could be in one of your follow-up if you want to add some jokes, and jokes are like two-sided, sometimes it works very well, sometimes it backslash, you have a backlash. So you have to be slightly careful with humor, but it could work very well. And sometimes you add like an animated GIF or some stuff like that in a follow-up. This could lighten the mood. This could actually be what tip the person over to reply. A lot of time when people reply, it's also, like I mentioned, it's a lot about timing. Like if this is a problem in the business right now they're looking at, they will be paying more attention to your email than if that's not something they perceive as a problem.
Okay, now we have, if we are already listed in spam, then how to reverse it for landing in the primary folder again? That's with the warm-up tool, right?
Yeah, I would recommend that. Hey, good, you learned from my webinar. Awesome.
I did.
So absolutely, the first thing I would say is like, stop, it's not working. Stop it. That's the first step to do. Stop.
And
it's
you
not
said
working.
3 or 4 weeks later, it could be good once you use the warm-up
It could be,
tool,
but
right?
if you constantly ending up like in spam, I would also recommend you revisit who you're contacting and what you're saying to those prospects. So it's an opportunity to revisit and review your campaign, I would say.
And do you recommend to use the warm-up tool or maybe just buy another domain?
Oh, that's a good question. It depends. Doesn't really matter. You can use the same domain. It's not that big of a deal as long as you sort of like cool it down, right? And I think it's okay because if you have to think about it, there are millions, really literally more than millions, like domains. And so no one can actually keep like a whole database of all of them to the whole sort of like history. Plus they get bought and sold. So it's like unfair for people who buy it to suddenly inherit, their domain reputation of that person, even after 4 years, they haven't, doing anything with it. So those domains tend to be forgotten at some point. And I think in experience, it's about like 1 month.
Okay. And now
warming it up with also the domain volume is going to be taking time. So I would say it's fine. Yeah. Keep the auto warmer on for. Then
you mentioned OVH, not to use it, but someone said, what about OVH registrar.com with redirection by weeks?
Yeah, this is fine. The registrar is fine. You have like tons of registrar. I'm only talking about the email sender provider. So if you use OVH to actually send email, this is a bad idea. If you use AWS to send email, this is a bad idea. Usually if you're trying to use your own SMTP type of server, this is a bad idea. I would say try to play within the rules of Gmail or Google or Microsoft. And I think that'll teach you, first of all, how to do it properly. And so you will be less impacted in the future when rules are changing. You will have also better deliverability. Everyone using a SMTP, well, almost everyone using an SMTP has a worse deliverability rate than using Gmail or Microsoft. Why? Because if I'm a server and I'm receiving an email from Gmail or Microsoft, I know they at least try to prevent spammers on their end. If I'm receiving from OVH, I don't know, OVH, they could do anything they want. It's like anyone just buying it and then sending, right? And that's the same sort of like mentality. So that's also, you have to think like that. I would say don't try to sort of like game the game in a sense and try to improve your game instead. Okay, good. Well, I think that's it. Someone is asking if we will share this video. We will share this video in our YouTube channel, and you will get the replay, Jeremy's contact,
and his website in case you want to contact him back. Wait, they have, what about the autoresponder? Do you recommend any autoresponder?
What do you mean exactly by autoresponder? In what context? Like,
I think this is, yes.
Out of office?
I think this is when you are out of the office and you put the autoresponder, but do you recommend it for,
I have no
let's see if
problem with
one can,
it. Like, it's people contacting you. It's not cold outreach when you have an autoresponder.
and this
so
counts
it's
as
fine.
this counts as a response, right? So it's
Yes,
good.
exactly. It counts as like one of the black hat technique was to actually have a list of freelancers and just ask them for their pricing. Of course, everyone will want to reply to you because they will think like you're a customer, but it's one of the black technique. I don't like black hat technique. So.
Okay. And what about digital signatures with a photo and a website social media link?
You have to make sure that the link you're putting is not, has a bad reputation, because it could definitely impact your deliverability. I would say, make sure your signature is actually an important component of your call outreach. Like, if you don't put signature, are you going to get less or more replies, right? That's what you need to think of, because lots of time it's a trade-off. You can add more things in your signature, but if they have no impact on your campaign, you may well just not add them.
Okay. But do I have to know if the reputation of my landing page is bad so I can add it or not add it to my signature email?
Sorry, what do you mean?
For example, if I add www.wallaxy.com to my signature, I need to know if it has a bad score.
Well, if you're adding your domain, then that should be okay, because that's bundled into your domain, your email reputation in a sense. So I think I'd be fine with that. I didn't mention it, strangely enough, but use custom domain tracking, which basically means you're not using the domain link of the tool you're using, but the one that you're actually specifying. It's a technical setup again, and most tools will show you how to do it. This should be like super simple, the same way, even simpler than doing the SPF and DKIM. But do that, to improve your deliverability instead of relying on other softwares to track your link and clicks. Okay.
Does anyone has any other question before we go? I see some thank yous here. Thank you.
Oh, that's nice.
Thank you very much
for joining. Oh, Philippe. Thank you. Yes. Oh, Paul as well. Oh, Cedric as well. Hey, guys, love you. Thank
Everyone
you so much.
Is thanking you. Okay, it's good. Well, thank you guys for joining us today, and we will send you the replay. I don't. Yes. You close the screen. Okay.
I'm still here.
So we'll send you the. I was like, oh, what happened? Okay. We'll send you the replay, Philip's contact, and I will send you the next webinar. Please stay tuned in our community, and see you soon in another episode. Thank you so much, Jeremy. It was super nice. I learned a lot, and I guess everyone else did so. It's brilliant. Super good.
Thank you everyone for attending and asking great questions.
Yes. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. What's up? Your